I'd like to talk to you about the adaptive corporation. And when I think of that, I think of what Darwin said, and it's not what you might think he said. He never actually talked about survival of the fittest. He talked about the survival of those species that are best able to adapt to their changing environment. And I think that insight is as important for a corporation, because a corporation is really a living organization, and it's an organization that has to be able to adapt to its changing environment. And let me give you a couple of examples. One from a large traditional organization that I was invited by their CEO of a company called BAE Systems, defense contractor here in the United States. And they were in the process of adapting as a defense contractor where they were building large naval ships. And the government was cutting back its investment in expanding its fleet. And so BAE Systems had to adapt and reinvent a large part of their business from building new ships to learning how to extend the lives of the existing fleet. So if the active life of a naval ship might be 20 to 25 years, the new business opportunity for BAE Systems as it becomes an adaptive corporation is to say, how can we extend the life of that ship from 20 to 25 years to maybe 35 years? And that last 10 years has incredible economic consequences in a positive way for the U.S. military, but it requires BAE Systems become an expert in material science because they have to come up with new types of preservation paints and other types of surfaces that will extend the life of the hulls of these ships. And in fact, BAE Systems has done that quite successfully. So big traditional corporations can adapt, even if it takes several years for them to be able to accomplish that. But let me give you an example of a newer corporation that became big quickly, but also became exposed quickly to rapid innovation in its industry, and that's Facebook. About 2 years ago, the market value of Facebook stock was around $20, and more recently has been over $70. So there's been a miraculous recovery in the share price of Facebook since its original IPO. And Facebook, in spite of having roughly 1 billion users around the world, had seen some slowdown in terms of the use of its service. People weren't spending as much time on it as they used to. And a number of younger people were starting to think of Facebook as being the old way, something their parents used. And they were moving to new mobile type services like WhatsApp and Twitter, Vine, applications which seemed more in keeping, Snapchat, Instagram, things that were of more interest to people who were living on mobile devices. So here was Facebook, who had built their business around a loyal younger population. Remember, it was started by Mark Zuckerberg when he came out of university. And here was Facebook suddenly being threatened as these very core users were starting to move to mobile devices, and Facebook didn't really have a mobile story. And so what did they do? Well, they tried a number of different user interfaces, and they weren't all successful initially, but they were adapting to their changing environment. And more recently, they've come up with an incredible user experience. It's the best mobile device experience I've seen on the small real estate of smartphone. And it's called Paper. At the moment, it only runs on the Mac, but eventually it'll be available on Android as well. And it's getting great acclaim throughout the tech world. Facebook also figured out how to monetize their Facebook experience with advertising, and that's been quite successful. And now they're learning how to monetize that on a smaller screen on mobile devices. And so they have great cash flow coming in from much better success in monetizing their Facebook user base, their installed base. The third thing they did was they started to look around and say, is there an acquisition that would help us build the growth path for our mobile services? And in this case, it was a huge surprise when Facebook said, we're going to pay $19 billion for a company that has 55 employees. $19 billion for a company called WhatsApp that actually is in a slightly different business than Facebook is in, because it's people being able to chat over mobile devices. And Facebook said, we're going to buy this company, and they did it largely with stock, which meant that while it was dilutive in terms of the price per share, with the huge success that Facebook has had of increasing the value of their shares and the optimism that people have about the strategic value of putting those businesses together, by doing it with stock, made it less of a dilution when you look at it from those points of view. So now what does Facebook have? Well, now they have a application that adds 465 million users on WhatsApp, and WhatsApp is able to be a lead generation of potential users who would be interested to go to the new mobile experience of Facebook. And when Mark Zuckerberg met at Mobile World Congress in Barcelona in 2014 with the largest telco owners around the world, they announced that WhatsApp was going to add a voice service to us. Now, what does that mean? Well, think about the first global telecommunications company for voice services. So Facebook has been able to adapt to a changing environment where it grew rapidly because people wanted to use large real estate multimedia screens to be able to have personalized pages, personalized walls with Facebook, and then suddenly the world shifted to mobility. And unlike Microsoft, who wasn't quick to adapt to mobility, Facebook took on the challenge, made some mistakes with some of their first iterations of both what the experience should be like and how to monetize it. But making mistakes, remember I've said, is okay as long as you learn from those mistakes. And they just kept rapidly failing and learning and developing, and they were moving on parallel fronts with acquisition as well as internal things they could do with their core product, Facebook, and new things they could do with mobility interface. And all of those things were going on. And in the space of 2 years, Facebook completely transformed its position to be able to take advantage of the new environment. And it's never been done on a scale that quickly, that fast, and that competently, I think, before. So big organizations, in this case a company with over $120 billion market cap, was able to pivot and pivot successfully. And you look inside of the Facebook organization, you say, well, what's the leadership look like? Well, in the case of Apple, Steve Jobs is a superb designer. He's a systems designer. And Mark Zuckerberg has shown himself to be a superb systems designer. But Mark did not have the same level of operating experience from a management capability to manage a very large, increasingly complex organization. Sheryl Sandberg has shown incredible experience in terms of being able to help Facebook adapt from a management standpoint, while Zuckerberg is leading it from a systems design standpoint. So here's a company in a space of 2 years with two strong leaders who were able to work together that systemically changed itself. And the adaptive corporation is about systemic change. It's not about, say, we're going to add something new and everything else stays the same. It's about systemically taking what you have been, extracting out the highest value parts of what you have been, and saying systemically, I'm going to make that have a value going forward, but I'm recognizing that the world changes and that in true transformation leadership, you've got to be able to add new things to that systemic design, and you've got to show competence in the management and integration of the new things and the old things, and that's what an adaptive corporation does. So Facebook, brilliant example of an adaptive corporation. BAE Systems, another example of a traditional, old line corporation in a very different market, that also has shown some excellent competence in terms of adaptive management. Then compare that with companies that went through near-death experiences and didn't make it through to the other side.